Welcome to the Derek Loudermilk Show. This is episode 395 with Brandon Bozarth. Brandon Bozarth is a facilitator of integrated self-inquiry. And in this episode, we're going to look at different topics of inquiry, from the self to happiness, boredom, purpose, symbolism, projection into the unknown, and a lot more. And then you'll hear an example of Brandon coaching me or walking me through a process of inquiry about an upcoming project that I am working on. And it actually has tremendously helped me in the weeks following recording this episode. Brandon is also the creator of the 13 transformational experience that he channeled in 2 parts. And he leads workshops and talks and is a well-regarded facilitator around the world. So without further ado, here is Brandon Bozarth. Brandon Bozarth, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Excited to be here.
Yeah, great to connect with you. And I saw recently that you took a trip to the desert.
Yeah, Death Valley.
That just right away, just that situation. I come from an adventure background, just doing adventures in all kinds of different places around the world. And that kind of like immediately jumped out at me as something that maybe we should talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And you were doing a water fast, is that right?
Yeah, 4-day water fast.
Was that your first time doing water?
I've done water fast before. I haven't done 4 days. I think the longest I did was close to 3 days, just under 3 days.
Yeah, and my sense as I sort of saw a video of you talking about this was whenever we do like a ceremony or something, I'm thinking particularly of like plant medicine, there's like, you get so much just from the pausing of the normal routine. Like you don't even need the plant medicines. It's just like creating that big open space. All kinds of insights and new ways of thinking just kind of flood in.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, and we get a preview of this every night when we go to sleep. Our attention retracts from what it's placed on throughout the day, whether that's our activities, just our basic day-to-day stuff, brushing our teeth, other people, projects, our work. And the attention retracts and draws back into itself. And in that retracting of attention, the unconscious mind can boil to the surface. This is why meditation can be so challenging, but also so rewarding, because you're able to bring light to things that are always there, and that on some level are there, but because of our modern day lifestyle, continue to get kind of unconsciously suppressed. So a lot of people are afraid of fasting, not just because it's going to lead to some discomfort, but essentially they understand that the discomfort is a well of discomfort and beliefs and unintegrated maybe experiences from the past. And you're really going to be confronted with yourself, because that's the hardest thing to be with in the desert. It's not the elements. It's not the dirt and the rocks. It's not really hard to be with. It's your mind,
Yeah, I did a 4-day water fast before I became a dad for the first time. It's 7 years ago now. And I had all these crutches, I had all these like, I'm a scientist. Okay, I'm going to just observe nature around me and like kind of like study what's going on. Or I'm going to like do an ice plunge to, push myself even farther. And then there's those moments where there's like nothing else left to do but be with yourself.
Yeah. And boredom is subtle resistance. There's really no such thing as boredom. It's boredom is the thought there's something better in a future. And that's how the mind lives. And as long as the mind lives, then we experience time. And as long as we experience time, psychological time, there will be some sense of suffering, even if it's very subtle. So I noticed in the desert, it was like, if I couldn't know, not just think or believe, but if I couldn't know that this moment is the best that it gets, that I can't put, it's like what I put in the future stays there. Oh, there'll be more relief after I can eat and eat. And I was dreaming about carrot cake off and on. So I was like, this is carrot cake that from this one restaurant. I'm gonna get it. And it's like my mind would go, okay, that's a better reality than now. And the reality that I'm pointing to is just another thought. It's literally not a reality. It doesn't exist. So it has to create and point to an illusion because it in of itself is an illusion. So every form, even if it's, I'm going to work out, I'm going to do something positive out here, even if that's motivated by not wanting to experience resistance or boredom or fear, whatever it might be, all of that can be used to stay in time, stay in the dream, and continue to suffer.
Okay, I feel like we should unpack this a little bit. Um, so yeah, just imagining like a delicious meal when you are not eating is not real. It's just your imagination, and you're saying it binds you to time,
Mm-hmm.
which is connected to suffering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not that just having the thought is going to bind me, but it's if I believe the thought. Thoughts arise. I can't control what thoughts arise. If we could all control our thoughts, we'd all be happy, perfectly happy all the time. If we were actually in control of all of our thinking, but our thinking mind is just constantly running. We are witnessing the thinking mind. And when we latch onto it, we create an identity. We create a person in time and space. We go, okay, I'm here in this body, and there's a future that I can conceive of that I actually believe is going to give me something I don't already contain. And so we create lack in that moment. Okay, there's something here missing that only a future can fulfill. And so what happens when we chase something or look for something that's not here and now, when the only thing we can experience is here and now? It's we're only going to continue to find more lack in the here and now, no matter how much we get or gain or experience, because of what's driving our behavior. So the moment I go, eating the carrot cake is going to be a better experience than here and now, I'm invalidating the here and now. So I can't experience happiness, joy in the here and now, because the very seeking of happiness is suffering. It's the same thing. I wouldn't seek happiness if I already was it. So the moment the seeking starts, I'm in the illusion.
All right, so I'm imagining like a person who's sick, and
Mm-hmm.
they're like, oh, I just can't wait to be better,
Mm-hmm.
to have my health back. Um, it seems like such a persistent, like, oh, it really will be better, and because I
Yeah.
have this experience of times when I have been fully healthy.
Mm-hmm.
um it's hard not to like latch onto that.
Yeah.
But so if you're saying if you were just fully accepting that being sick in the present was like the happiest you could be, it seems like I'm trying to
Yeah. Well,
figure
let's
that
just
out.
let's define happiness. So what we've been told is happiness is a state of being or an emotion, right? So happiness is something that comes and goes. And typically we look at the things that make us happy, activities, events, people, and we go, okay, this is what is responsible for my happiness. Because when I am with them, happiness arises. Or when I do this thing, happiness arises. So if we take happiness and we insert it into an object or an experience, then it has to be something that comes and goes. Versus a deeper understanding, which is when I'm around this person, when I do this thing, my sense of self dissolves. When I say self, I mean my psychological self, the self with a past, with a story. And those stories could be I'm not enough, I'm this, I'm that, some position that I've held that I've identified with. In the moments of happiness, I'm so present. Think of, you were an athlete, like you shared with me before we started. Think of moments when you were in playing sports and you were so incredibly present. There's no suffering there. And there can be pain there. You can get hit. You can get hurt, but when you're really in the game, there's no past, there's no future, there's just here and now. And that's another word for acceptance. But notice it didn't take you consciously choosing to accept the moment to be in it. You just stopped. You just stopped fighting the moment. There was just no inherent resistance to you to play the game. You wanted to play, and you did. And you, as you knew it, was gone. The psychological you that we think of as past and future. So, in the absence of past and future dreamed self, is our being. It's just unconditioned self. Unconditioned self is happiness. It's not an emotion that comes and goes. What comes and goes is the person we think we are. The story of past and future, those thoughts, like any thought, even on this podcast, my thoughts are rising and falling, rising and falling. So that's what comes and goes. What never leaves is happiness, but it can get covered up by the thoughts and emotions that we latch onto in our attempt to, typically unconscious attempt to define ourselves, to be someone, because that's what we all were conditioned to take on as we grew up. You were pointed to, and your parents said, "You're Derek. We're your parents," and we start defining ourselves as this body, and we create a timeline. But before we're able to do that, as children, we're just being, we're just existing, and this is why it's hard to have memory in those early years, because we didn't really experience time. We were so present. We didn't have an experience of progressing from one age to another, from one self to another self. That happened after we started to create a sense of self. So again, what I'm pointing to is there's a seeing through the persona that happens very normally. This isn't a mystical experience, but it is what people call enlightenment, but it's not mystical. It's what happens when our sense of self relaxes and our being, essence, this here and now moment, is in a sense, we're directly vertical with the moment. We're not in a horizontal past and future plane. We're right here. And that's really what everyone's looking for. That's what people chase when they're jumping out of airplanes, with sex, religion. They're all looking for the same thing, which is themselves, which is the essence of happiness. And that's the typical, the stereotype, the pursuit of happiness. We're all pursuing happiness. It is the one common thread, not because we're all conditioned to pursue it, because we all have it's because we have an intuition that we are that. And so we all yearn to return to that.
Yeah, I like what you said about the normal state is happiness, and it gets covered up. And it reminds me of David Hawkins' work, where he's talking about like why alcohol makes people feel good, and how it depresses the part that covers up the happiness. Like it can like turn down that, and so like then the happiness can like shine through for a moment. Which was like finally understood, how that mechanism could be so addictive. And so like that obviously leads to the question, like, would it make sense to try to cram your days with things that make you forget your identity and just like reveal the happiness within?
That's one path, but that will have a limit because it's based on conditions. And we can't control conditions, and conditions have to change. So if I get really good at filling my day up with things that reveal who I am, which typically feel like a sense of excitement or inspiration or curiosity, that's the energy that universally we're all drawn to reveal ourselves, essentially to ourselves. There will be a time, and this is just in my experience, where those conditions don't line up in the way that you want them to, which reveals some sort of limitation in that moment. I can't access myself. I can't be happy because this condition isn't met. Now, gift in that is that that moment is a conspiracy. It's a uh, organized event that is happening on behalf of God, the universe, to reveal to you where you're holding on to some limitation. Because that's the name of the game, and at least in this density, is we're attracting situations and circumstances to reveal to us our own limiting beliefs so we can identify them, let them go, and access happiness and love more unconditionally without needing the condition. So there's nothing wrong with stacking the day up with things that, you know, allow the happiness to show up. But that's more of an indirect path. That's using indirect means, meaning an action, an object, an activity. But through inquiry, you can also access that directly. And once it's almost like, you know, doing something in order to find happiness is my persona, it's my ego doing something to dissolve itself.
Mm-hmm.
And in the I mean, that'll happen so often until you're like, do I really need this object or this thing? Because very easily, even a good action or habit or process can become an addiction. And all addiction means is I feel like I have no choice but to use this or do this thing or engage in this process. The put it this way, the only way I can feel a certain state of being, access a certain state of being, is through this object. That's when it becomes an addiction, when it doesn't feel like you can access the same or similar state of being without it. When it feels like you have no choice, then there's dependency. Then even if it's working out or green juice, eventually it will lead to some imbalance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that makes sense. Um, Anything else you want to share about your time in the desert?
Hmm. I mean, I'd recommend to anyone listening just being in solitude, letting yourself um, get off of your phone, be in nature. For me, it was I was at a really pivotal moment in my life. I was in a 3.5 year relationship that probably for a good year and a half, I suppressed this gut feeling inside of me that I knew I needed to move on. I knew this wasn't the relationship I wanted to stay in um, in terms of life partnership. And so I was just confronted. I was confronted with where I was suppressing. I was confronted with patterns that have been with me since I was 18 in terms of relationship, and um, the tremendous guilt at the time of, man, I've led this person on. I've lied. I haven't been fully honest. And um, as soon as I confronted that part of myself and took it to inquiry and could really understand why it made sense to me, and this is really important. Why does every coping mechanism make sense and work? Especially when we see it work as a child, we can find innocence in our strategies when we see how, as a child, it helped us regulate. It helped us not completely fall apart and go crazy and feel overwhelmed. And that those unconscious patterns have to be played out until they don't. And that's really important to hear. They have to be played out until they don't. Why? Because that's what they do. Doesn't matter if we think it should be different. They're all played out. They all have to be chosen because they are until they're not. And so once I really saw that, it was like, oh, all of that had to happen for me to be here to fully see, fully understand, and make a new choice. And that really the following year, because it's been a year since, completely changed my life on so many levels. I mean, it's been the most challenging, revealing, rewarding year of my life since the desert.
And so did you go there with the specific intent to analyze the relationship, or like to get clarity about that relationship?
That was part of it. Yeah. Yeah. There's other reasons as well with my work. just the fact that it initially kind of scared me when my buddy invited me. It's like, oh, 4 days in the desert, no tent, just laying on the ground with a sleeping bag and a pad, scorpions, rattlesnakes, the whole thing. And I don't know, whether it's my conditioning or my personality, I've cultivated this sense of, okay, it scares me, I have to do it now. And I've just lived my life that way. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it just because of that. And then I kind of sat with it. It's like, why do I really want to do this? Okay, relationship stuff, upper limit stuff with my business, some self sabotage stuff. I mean, there was a whole soup of reasons.
Yeah, that sounds very much like the adventurer's credo, which is like, how much can you really know about yourself if you've never done XYZ challenging thing? It's like, just do the
Totally.
challenging thing just for the heck of it.
Yeah.
Um, your story kind of reminds me of, I was married for 18 months, 10 years ago now, and it was one of those situations where the girl I was dating really wanted to be married, and I was like, oh well, I like to do nice things for you, and so I'll do this. And I didn't, it wasn't that I didn't want to be married, it was just that I was like, I did not want to be married, and I did, I was just like ambivalent about it. So I just kind of went along
Mm,
with the process, and then very clearly like felt really guilty,
hmm.
um like, oh, like, this means way more to you than it does to me.
Yeah.
um
Yeah. I get it. It's like we get our needs met, certain needs are met from childhood. And at least for me, it was like, as long as certain needs were met in the relationship, I wouldn't honor my true desires and preferences and what I really wanted. And that was more of the underlying issue for me, was some form of self-neglect. I can't totally have what I want. I can't totally put myself first. I can't totally make my needs known. So as long as I have someone that's not going to leave me, at least I can go do my work and, you know, um, feel safe that the relationship's not going to end, as long as if I'm someone to the other person, if they see me in a certain way where I know they're not going to leave, then I could at least have some level of safety, security, needs being met that then will really let me do my work in the world. That was my thinking at the time.
Yes, it's like I've got all these security boxes ticked,
Mhm.
like, that
Yeah,
frees me up to have the capacity to do this other stuff,
exactly.
which is super real. I see, like, we have a lot of homeless in my neighborhood where I live in St. Louis, and they don't have the like pillars of stability in their lives. So that, like,
Mm,
when one thing goes wrong, like, that's the last straw. you
mm,
know um like, this woman the other day came up to me and she's like, my power is out and I need to stay in a hotel overnight, and like, can you give me money? And I was like, okay, did you talk to any of your friends? Like, can you go stay with your friend? Or like, can you stay in a shelter and like use the money that you have for better use? And I was kind of like trying to figure out like why it was so urgent that she needed to like stay in a hotel room.
mhm,
um and it became clear that like she didn't have anybody to call, right? She didn't
mm,
have a support system in any way. And so there's like, you get pushed to sort of the very edge of the what you can handle, and then boom,
mhm. Yeah.
you're
And it's interesting because I can't say I don't know the woman, but not having anyone to call, I would question that, if that's really true, or if she's felt a sense of shame and guilt that says, well, there are some people, but they've said no before, they've said this, and they might not be open to me calling, which has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with how I'm going to interpret them saying no, because I can't actually know if they're open now or not. And that's one thing to consider, how much we can create our own scenario, our own life, where we feel backed into a corner because of our mind, because of the assumptions we've put on people in reality. And also any belief that says safety is something that is found in an environment or sense of or set of conditions, safety or security. um Because if we look at what safety and security is, it's a state of being. At any time we're here and now, there's a sense of safety and security. So even if I'm hungry, I'm on the street and I'm homeless, and I couch surfed for a while. I was homeless in the sense that I didn't have my own home. I had places to stay, but I went through a period of that where, and for me, I was very, there was stuff that came up, but I was really excited because I wanted to see if I could find a sense of freedom and safety and security without all of the stuff that normally gave me that.
Mm.
And in that experiment, um, I realized the only thing that can make me not. Oh, wow. That was a bird. Oh, poor guy. Just
Fly
ran
into
right.
your window.
Yeah. There was two
Huh.
of them. I think he's dead
Oh my goodness.
or he's knocked out. We'll hope he gets up. He's not moving. Wow. And we'll continue on. Yeah, the only thing that can cause me to feel insecure is believing my thoughts, believing my own mind, believing a thought about a future. Because if I really take it down to, okay, I'm sitting here on the street, I'm hungry, I'm alone. Same thing, in the desert. I'm sitting here, I'm hungry, I'm, I could be dehydrated, wherever the mind's going to go. As long as I'm believing that thought, I'm creating a sense of anxiety. But the anxiety is about a future that doesn't exist. So it's not because of the desert. It's not because of my conditions. It's because I'm believing something that's not in reality. But reality itself is never unsafe. There's never insecurity or security, any of that duality actually in reality. Reality is just what it is. And I'm either fighting it or not. And that determines my sense of safety and security.
Hmm. I'm I'm thinking of like an example that's like clearly unsafe. Like let's
Mm-hmm.
say the moment is like you're in a car crash and the car is like actively like flying through the air or something. Or
Yeah.
um could you speak to that moment? Like
Mm-hmm.
because that clearly is like an unsafe
Yeah.
situation.
That's great. So it's distinguishing between suffering and the body's response to um, danger. So we're talking about psychological suffering. So typically, the moment when you're in a car crash, there's no trauma that's created in that moment. Tons of people have car crashes and they're not traumatized, and there's people that have car crashes and they are traumatized. Well, what's the difference? The moment typically happens so fast, you're not necessarily thinking during a car crash or something that's so sudden. You're not at least conscious of what you're thinking. But then right after the event, it could be literally milliseconds after, once you're kind of back, a story's created. I almost died. That could be one. So in that moment, there's a belief in death. There's a belief that my life is tied to my body. And that belief was always there, but now the event brought it to the surface. And so if we believe that, if we believe the end of my body is the end of me, then we're associating the event with the end of me, which is scary. And so right in that moment, it's the thought that would put me into a state of suffering, because if maybe before I haven't considered that thought and this really brought it to the surface, I might start to live my life to avoid death from that point forward. And I can go, oh, the car crash really traumatized me. Or was it what happened internally in response to the car crash? My thinking and believing about it that I didn't question, that then has created suffering from that point forward. Because there's nothing wrong with temporary pain or feeling of unsafety, or our body going into fight or flight to adapt to something. That's no one goes to therapy for that, because that rises and then falls right back down. It's the suffering that then takes that moment into your life based on the stories you tell about it, that create suffering.
Okay, yeah, I've got some follow-up questions, but I want to talk about the bird. Do you
He's on his feet now.
He's on his feet. Okay.
Yeah, I think he maybe just got a little dizzy or yeah.
Do you do you see that as a as an omen, or does that like bring
Yeah.
you any particular information?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it's like being stopped by invisible barriers. You know, you think of like a bird flying represents freedom, and then running into an invisible barrier, our own mind, our own beliefs. I mean, it's everything we were talking about. Um, yeah, that's my initial reaction.
Interesting. I from reading your about page on your website, it seems that perhaps we had like a similarly wonderful childhood,
Mm-hmm.
like largely avoiding like uh negative experiences. I just had a really wonderful, me and my two parents. I was the only child.
Mm-hmm.
Like I went to a great school. We did all kinds of fun family vacations, and it was just really wonderful. And then I have friends that will say things to me like, if I had your childhood, then I wouldn't have all this trauma that I have to like unpack now. Or like, you must have been hugged a lot as a kid because you seem uh, confident in a different way. Um, could you talk about trauma and its like um what I'm hearing you say maybe is that it's like a collection of stories
Mm-hmm.
that we have to sort of like dissolve for ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, could you say more about that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, this is so interesting because it doesn't, having a good childhood, I'm sure now you've seen a lot of subtlety, right? They call that trauma with a lowercase t, soft trauma. So whether it's parents overly nurturing to create a sense of entitlement, whether it's parents only wanting to be in the positive energy and like always giving the sign that if you're too emotional or if you're bad, that that's wrong. Even just the words, oh, don't cry, or hey, it's going to be okay, don't worry. When you're worried, you're getting the sign, you're getting the signal. I'm not okay just as I am. I can't just be this. There's something I need to change about myself. And that registers as a sense of abandonment, rejection, like that hurts. And so when it's subtle like that, um, and we look back, we go, yeah, I can't really find these like really traumatic moments. And I'm not saying that I haven't had those. I have had a couple that did feel traumatic, but for the most part, it was that very subtle entrainment to a certain way of being that I couldn't see until life really had to shake me up later in life, later than people that might have been very shaken up at 10 years old. And the pain was so intense, they had to find relief at 14. They were starting therapy at 15. And then they found, spirituality and yoga. And they were really launched in the direction of this path. I'm not saying it's nuanced and it's not about it being easier or harder, but sometimes the subtle path is a lot harder to navigate than someone who has really overt trauma that then has been very that has responded in a way that's very direct in their healing versus someone who's kind of in the gray zone of like, where am I, what, it could be just as challenging, I'll just put it that way. But yeah, fundamentally trauma is an event that occurs that we have an internal response to that uh, signifies some belief or begins or reveals some belief that we're not enough. There's something lacking. There's something wrong. Whatever the story is, it implies some sort of lack. That's then believed, that then determines our strategies, how we alter ourselves to make up for that imagined sense of lack, that then really sculpts our personality and persona, even our likes and dislikes. And so much of who we think we are can be derived from ways of coping with trauma. And so the undoing process is a coming back to a more authentic self.
I feel like we've we've like gone into some pretty um not dense, but like concepts that are like hard to like really uh fully understand until you like practice them for a while, like already in the
Mhm.
conversation.
Mhm.
Um so
I can
maybe
give
I
you
want
an
to.
example on the trauma piece to just land it if you'd
Okay,
like.
perfect. Yeah.
So I'll use an example for myself. Okay, so my mom, my older brother had 8 years of drug abuse, and he's 8 years older than us. And my mom comes from a broken home with drugs, and my dad comes from a broken home from alcohol. So they both vowed, okay, we're not going to, we're going to break the pattern. And they did. They're not addicted to, they've never been addicted to any substances. And we're going to make sure this ends in our family. Right. So, there's because of that desire to not to kind of give us a path. Hey, this is good. This is not good. Drugs are bad. Naturally, we're going to feel some sense of aversion and guilt and towards drugs, but then also some sort of curiosity. What's that all about? Why? What? It's like that's what happens with
Mm.
kids. So my brother at some point went down that path, and then I'm a twin, so I was born, and me and my twin were born, and my mom was just set. I mean, this happened years later, but set on us not going down the same path. So she became very protective, very controlling, and really sheltered us. Had all the attempts, at least. I interpreted that as, wait a second, like I'm not, like if I'm bad, that's meaning if I don't do what my mom wants me to do, if I'm not good in her eyes, then I could be abandoned. Then there's something really wrong with me. And I would see the attitudes of my parents towards my brother and not know why it seemed so off at times, because we weren't necessarily told till later there was a drug thing. So I always thought, man, Brian seems bad, and it seems like they're pulling their love away, and it seems like they treat him different. That seems really scary. I don't want that to happen to me. So it was like this, there's something like I can't, there's things that I can do that would make me totally unlovable. And it's all predicated on being good versus being bad. And
Hmm.
so naturally, the suppression of badness, which we all have, had to come out over time. I would hide things. Me and my brother would lie to go to parties, and, um, porn. There was just, it was like we had to then further express some of the badness and hide it and conceal it, um, out of the fear of being abandoned, out of the fear of not being loved. So
Hmm.
extrapolate that over years and years of that pattern that showed up in my relationships. I come off as good. I want to be seen as good, because if you really see all of my badness, you're not going to want to be with me. You're going to reject me. You're going to abandon me. And so it wasn't until I started owning the dark side, you could say, or the badness within me, which really isn't bad. It's just the aspect, we have it all within us. We have the version of us that wants revenge and wants to hurt and harm, and that wants to, and like an animal, like just fuck and fight, and like we have that whole spectrum within us. And if any of it's being suppressed, suppression breeds addiction. So for me, it was like I always needed sex. I always needed women, because part of me felt bad, guilty for wanting that, because in my family, sex wasn't necessarily something that, at least the impression that I got and the way I perceived it, was good. It was something that, needed to be managed, and look, porn is bad and this is bad. And, um, so that's just to give you an idea that shaped my personality and what I valued, which was really a way of coping with not wanting to feel bad by being perceived as good by others, typically by women, because that's what
Hmm.
I wanted from my mom. So I would make them into my mom, see me as good, see me as good. And then inevitably, I would turn bad. I would be angry or cruel, or all of that suppression would come out, because it wasn't being loved. It wasn't being seen. It wasn't being questioned.
And when you say you owned those the dark aspects. Like what does that mean?
Hmm. I'll give you an example. So I was with one of my coaches mm, maybe a month and a half ago, and the first step is just admitting to yourself what's actually there. And so I'm about, let's see, 3 months after ending, um, leaving a relationship that brought so much of this darkness out, you could say. And I was really angry after the relationship. I was really angry, and I'm still to some degree working through some of the anger. But about a month ago, its first step was admission. It was like I was actually admitting, oh yeah, I want to destroy this person. There's a part of me that wants to destroy this person, that wants them to hurt, that wants them to suffer, that wants them to feel ashamed, that wants them to feel bad. And it was like just the admission of those thoughts and feelings is 90%, not in judgment, not fighting it, not, oh, this is here and it's really bad, but actually just being able to observe and own, oh yeah, this is here. I want this. Even though I know at the deepest level I don't, so many of us in the spiritual community can't just say, yeah, I want to hurt that person. I want them to feel bad. I want them to regret their decision. Like we can't just meet that part. And if you meet and accept that part, then it can change. If you can't meet and accept that part, it can never change. So first step is admission. Second step is seeing if it's really true, if that's what I really want. And you can go through the questions. Okay, when I want this person to hurt, who do I become? What do I do? What behaviors do I do? What patterns and strategies come from that belief? And then I could look at my life and go, well, I'm miserable. I'm tired. I avoid things. I avoid people, and I could see my whole life playing out from believing that thought. And I can really investigate, is there anything in it for me to hold on to that thought? Am I gaining anything besides pain and stress? Is there anything for me to gain there? When I see there's nothing, because the ego will say, yeah, you will gain something. You'll gain power, control. If you can get them to hurt, it'll prove that you're loved, you're good, you're valuable. And you really start to get clear and question all of those beliefs. Is there something? Because that's how the ego operates. It will only do something because it thinks it's going to get something out of it. It's in its best interest. And if that thing is negative, like an addiction or behavior pattern, then what you think you're getting out of it, that's positive, you're actually not getting out of it. You're kind of tricking yourself to avoid something deeper. And for me, it was, well, if I really let it go, then all I'm going to be left with is my half of the relationship, where I was out of integrity, the grief I have to feel. So I was using it to hide from something that I felt was more painful than feeling angry. The anger was lazy. The anger was easy. I could sit here and point and blame all day and feel a little sense of power and control and goodness. But do I really? And if I let that go, what's going to be there? The sadness, the grief, the responsibility, the really dissecting myself and looking at the unhealed trauma. And I don't want to do that yet. So it was like it was serving a purpose. But once I saw that the purpose it was serving really isn't in my best interest, then I was able to drop it and be with and meet what was underneath it. And there's layers to that. That's an ongoing process, not like it's just one moment and it's done. But that's the basic mechanics of it.
Yeah, and I just want to sort of acknowledge or point out this like ability that you seem to have to like see many different aspects of your own like thoughts and experience and like move your perspective around and sort of I don't think that I have that same skill, so it's very it reminds me of I don't know, Byron Katie and her
Yeah.
story and like ability to like examine a thought and then put it down if it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
serve. And
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And she's one of my greatest influences. I just had
hmm.
a session with her just a few days ago, actually. I had a conversation with her for about an hour and 15 minutes.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. I didn't know that she was accessible like that.
Well, she does webinars, and I got there first and was selected. So you can,
Nice.
yeah.
Cool. Wow. Yeah. Twins. Do you have any special magic between you and your twin? Anything
Yeah, we had
interesting?
an experience. I'll just mention this one because it's probably the most profound. He broke his leg at age 8. And before that happened, we were playing football. Um, and my leg started killing me. I mean, to the point where I fell on the ground and was hitting my my femur, basically my thigh, and didn't feel like a cramp. It was much deeper. And to the point where I was hysterical, and coaches came over, what's wrong? What's wrong? And then all of a sudden you hear the sound of, it sounds like a tree branch breaking. And it was Josh's femur. And as soon as that happened, my pain went away instantly. And, he screaming, rushed to the hospital. He had pins in his leg. And I only realized a couple of weeks after when someone asked me, so what were you doing? I was like, I was on the ground holding my leg in the same exact spot, the same leg. So we've had those, a few moments like that.
Yours was first,
Yeah, mine
and
was
then his
first.
got broken. What do you think that he actually like took the injury from you, or were you like precognitively feeling his injury, or what
I
was
think it was
happening?
more precognitive. I think I sensed it coming, and I can't know for sure, but that's what it feels like.
Yeah, really interesting. And that was a while ago. You said you were a kid, but
Yeah, like I think he was 8 or maybe 8 or 9. Yeah.
man, so yesterday we had a really kind of crazy experience. My wife got really upset in the morning as we were getting ready for school. Like my daughter, who's 4, asked for like her special cup, and she got, my wife got like so angry and frustrated and upset and was crying. And I was like, "Whoa, what is going on?" Um, when they got to school, some construction worker accidentally clipped the wire that set off the like emergency lockdown shooter protocol, like
Mm-hmm.
the panic button. So
Mm-hmm.
the whole school like went into shooter lockdown,
Wow.
and it was super intense for them. And
Yeah.
uh, then it was like very obvious to me that Heidi was already feeling that experience that was about to happen, half an
Interesting.
hour earlier.
Interesting.
Because otherwise you wouldn't expect to have that strong of a reaction to like
Mm-hmm.
asking for
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Very interesting.
um so okay, I want to one thing that I want to get your thoughts on, because it's sort of relevant to where I am. I read that your 13 program, what's the full name of it?
The 13, an
The
equation of
13,
remembrance. Yeah.
an equation of remembrance. Okay, that was like a program that sort of like was downloaded to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um and I have a partial download of a program. Um, I know some of the pieces and the framework, but I don't have the full thing. So I'm just really curious to hear, like how you turned this sort of download or channeling like into an actual like
Mm-hmm.
thing that you could deliver to people.
Yeah. So I mean, I can't necessarily take responsibility for the conception of it because I quite literally was falling asleep and this symbol lit up my mind and I was incredibly energized and it just made sense. It made sense to go in and write everything that was going through my mind, and it outlined 6 principles. And I didn't know it was partial at the time because it felt complete for that version of me. And so I put it out, and only a year and a half later, while I was walking in Galway, Ireland, after hosting a retreat, did the same energy, not necessarily the symbol, but the same energy fill me up. And it was like, oh, there's 7 more. It's not 6, it's 13. And I went into this cafe right away, borrowed some paper and a pen and wrote them down. And it felt just true. It just felt complete. It felt exciting. So I didn't necessarily have any belief that says I can't share it. I shouldn't share it or it's incomplete. So naturally, I just shared it because I was excited to. So when it comes to the how, it's like it's more relevant. The real question is there anything in the way of letting myself share this in the way that is most natural and exciting to me now? And if there is, once that's dealt with, whatever beliefs or fears, then the how is so simple, becomes so clear. I just recorded myself talking about it and shared it with people. I mean, it was that simple. And because I was in a certain state of being, people could feel, oh, I want what he has, because I was completely lit lit up, and there's a sense of unlimitedness and expansion and fun and inspiration. So it was like I was not even me, but the energy in which I was emanating was the product. So when that's there, it's like it doesn't really matter what you do or what you share or how. It's just it kind of self-organizes and finds the people that are ready for that.
Yeah, so there's a couple places that I'm at. One is like um because it feels incomplete, like I feel like I have to go back to the well and like get the rest of the information somehow, which I've been sort of putting off. But
Mhm.
um and then the other, so I'm kind of curious, like, did you say like, hey, I've got this framework of 13, who, does someone want to come and I'll teach it to you? Or did you like, was there like an invitation for
Mhm.
people to come experience it? Or what was the next?
Well, I have a question for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
What makes you think it's incomplete as it is? I'm not saying it's not. It could be, but just what makes you think that?
Um, yeah, because it's only like there's a framework and a symbol. So it's interesting you got a symbol as well. Um, but yeah, like I can't really understand at this point, like how to take someone through what it is that I understand. Um,
Have
I have
you?
like one little sliver of like here's like an experience that I could curate for someone.
Mhm.
But it's not like the whole process.
Have you done that? Curated that experience for someone?
No,
Okay, so why not?
I guess mostly because I've been focusing on other things.
Does it excite you to curate that experience? Is it something you want to do?
Yeah.
Okay, so focusing on other things to avoid what you're excited about.
Equally exciting other things um,
Okay,
that needed
so
to be
so
completed.
then
But
so if it's equal, then there shouldn't be a problem. Like if I said, okay, in the next week, if it excites you to do so, go curate that experience for someone. Now, if what comes up is only, oh yeah, it's that simple, let me do that, that's exciting, great, then it'll be effortless. If more comes up, I want them to have a certain experience. I want them to walk away with something. I want to make sure I don't fail. Like if anything else comes up, then it will feel less exciting than other things in your life, but not because it's actually less exciting, because we're painting it with our mind and we're kind of dampening its excitement because of what it's bringing up in us. But see, that's the paradox. We want it to bring stuff up in us. That's its purpose, not to do it well, to see what it's bringing up in me that I can let go of so I can become more free. That's the success when it comes to the event, not doing it well, your own sense of freedom that this is just a process for.
okay, so you're saying I'm going to get a certain, like, whatever the guiding experience for someone else is going to give me a certain experience, and that's like really what.
Totally. And it already is right now. Like if I ask, okay, in this next week, why don't you go guide that experience? What are the first thoughts that come up?
The first thing that comes up is, yeah, that I would just have to sit down and figure out how to do it in a way. um,
And does that feel exciting or does that feel like daunting?
it feels pretty unknown. Like
Mm-hmm.
I have this like really strong sense that I'm going to create this thing, and it just, yeah, it feels like I don't exactly know how to do
Yeah.
it.
So our relationship to the unknown is either excitement or anxiety. Anxiety is I'm projecting something from my past into the future. That's what creates the experience of anxiety when it comes to the unknown. If there's nothing projected into the unknown, then it feels like unlimited possibility. It feels like open surprise. Ooh, I wonder how this is going to turn out. I have nothing in me that says there's such a thing as a bad turnout, a bad outcome. So I'm just open and excited for unlimited possibility because that's really what the unknown is. So that's something to sit with is okay, if there's any anxiety, what's the worst case scenario that I could imagine? And that will typically bring it out. And you just want to give light to what that is and a voice to what that is to see if it really is so bad. And when you can accept it, it's like, how do you teach someone to be a really good speaker on stage? You help them be okay being a total shit show on stage. You don't teach them how to speak well. That's easy. All that's easy. Skill development, easy. If this was just about skill and will, then all these people that practice all their life but never, make it big, whatever that means, then that wouldn't make any sense. Oh, well, they have all the practice, they have the skills. Well, why aren't they felt or seen by people? Because of the unconscious fear that keep them in their mind. So your um, willingness to look at anything that could be a source of anxiety and question what that is, and we can do that on this podcast if you want, will then allow yourself to just do it in the most natural way. And who knows where it's going to turn out? You might start it and it might lead you to something totally different.
Yeah, what's coming up for me is I could just take the two pieces that I have and sort of do each one. Um, and yeah, if I could possibly have no expectations about it, because
Mm-hmm.
then I don't have to like, yeah, just making it like as the smallest possible piece and just like
Mm-hmm.
get a few people to try
Yeah.
that.
Are you a
And,
perfectionist, Derek?
um, well, make, I would want to have people have a success, right? So if I was
Yeah.
to like say, hey, come do
So,
this thing with me, I would want them to actually have a good
yeah.
experience.
Yeah. And that's natural. We want people to have a good experience. But what is your definition of a successful experience for them?
That they would say, wow, I did it.
Mm-hmm.
I like was able to
Yeah.
do the thing that I tried to do.
Yeah. So if someone comes in and goes, I didn't do it, that sucks. That can that be a success in your eyes?
I mean, at this point, I probably wouldn't label it
Mm-hmm.
a success. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say like, oh, I need to improve the
Mm-hmm.
process.
And that's, it's healthy to go, okay, maybe this is something I need to look at. But if they're right, man, this didn't work. Oh, I should look at my process. And then you find something that you can improve on. That's a success. If they are upset, you genuinely look at your process, you go, that's the best that I can do. And it maybe brings up a sense of, I failed them. And then you really question that. Can I absolutely know that it's true that they needed to have a different experience than they did? Because we're only at war with reality. There's one experience. It's the experience that's happening. And it's always successfully itself. It's successfully what it is. Someone is, man, I'm really disappointed. Okay, that's reality. How can I know that their experience needs to be any different. I mean, for all I know, they could be so upset, want my money back on, they could go home and research how to get rid of anger. And that could lead them down a whole YouTube rabbit hole that leads them exactly where they needed to be because you and your experience pushed them exactly where they needed to go for some version of the typical definition of success later down the road. We just can't know. So when we start to see, I can't know what you need. It's not my responsibility to create your experience. My responsibility is to be myself and to share what is exciting for me for its own sake. Your experience is what it is. And if it brings up a belief in me that I did something wrong and I get to let that go, and then imagine who you would be in the same space without any thoughts that say they need to have a successful experience. Who would you be in the same experience without any thought they need to be have a successful experience?
Mm-hmm.
They need to heal or this or they need to anything, and really sit in that. Who would I be completely without that story? Not just with my with them in this experience, but this is going to be what's alive in my relationship with my friends. I mean, this is going to be, no, it's okay if they have a shitty experience and if they think it's my fault. Because is it really true that I can cause them to have a shitty experience? Is it a bad experience? Is that really true? And that's another, when we see that it's not true, it's just an illusion. It's like, can I be willing to let them have a bad experience and either meet what comes up in me and let it go to experience more freedom, or just simply accept that they had that experience and know that that must be what they need because that's reality. And if I fight reality, there's stress. If I don't fight reality, there's love, there's connection. Oh, you didn't have a good experience. Okay. Do you have any feedback for me? Yes. Okay. Thank you. What a success.
Yeah, this is really helpful actually. Like if it didn't matter what people's experience was, then I would just probably enjoy myself more.
Exactly. And that's what you ultimately want to teach them anyway, whether we know it or not. So that's you being it.
Okay. This is cool. Yeah, I think um where I was 15 minutes ago was kind of I'm gonna like spend like 2 months sort of architecting this sequence. And now where I think I'm at is I'm gonna like, as the pieces come up, just like have some people do them and sort of let them know that it's like a very rough thing, and they're going to be like participating in the development of the like protocol,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah. And, it might even be helpful to share with them, hey guys, like, and this is optional, but it's just what I found is creates so much coherence. I've had thoughts that that said, I really don't want you to have a bad experience. And
Mm.
when I believed that, I stress myself out and I maybe say things or do things that aren't totally authentic to try to ensure you have a good experience. And I see now it's not true, but that's been my experience of this, really wanting it to be good, and let them see that. It takes my experience is every time I'm radically honest in that way, any separation, any kind of pedestal from student teacher is completely obliterated, and a level of trust and openness is creates this. I mean, there's already a transformational experience just in that for most people, because how uncommon is that in their day-to-day life?
Mm. I'm aware that eventually I see this thing as like an offering this for sale for people to like pay for and go through, and that recently I've done this uh I call it the Five Rivers Healing Project, which is like a free thing that I'm doing, and like going around and installing these grids at various confluence points of the five rivers here in the Midwest. Um, and I'm curating this experience. I'm like inviting people along to come to the places with me or to join me online ahead of time. And because I'm not charging anything, then I'm like placing myself more as like a collaborator in the experience, or a like everyone's bringing their own wisdom to this experience. And um it's a much more of a, I'm the leader but also a beginner, because everyone's teaching me along the way, versus if I'm going to like sell a thing, then I need to have like a finished, packaged uh experience for people.
Mm-hmm.
um but even with this sort of like open to the public free project that I'm doing, like I still would like it to be more refined.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm like, when I do these, like if I do a call, I'm like, I really don't know what I'm doing. Or like when I actually go to the site, it's like I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing.
And how does it work out?
It works out fine. Although I am left wishing that mm, that it was somehow better. Partly I'm like hoping for like some very obvious sign from the universe, like great job.
Yeah. 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 And that could be a good thought to turn around, is like, I'm waiting for a sign from myself, good job. I'm waiting to give myself good job versus waiting for the good job.
You mean that I just tell myself good job?
Yeah, you validate the experience. And sometimes it's like validation automatically happens when we're not invalidating it. So if you walk away and go, that could have been better, that's the moment. That's the moment to really sit with. Is that true? Could it have been better? And if it could have, then am I making that into a story that creates a lack in myself, or am I just letting it inform the next thing? And if it creates a sense of lack, am I giving that attention and going, I did something wrong, I should have done this, I should have done, let me really sit with these thoughts, because those are the thoughts that run our life. And then we believe it, we get a little anxious, we feel a little lack, and then we go eat something, then we go do a little thing, and we close off a little bit, and then that's our life for the next 30 years. So it's like, right in that moment, the gift of it is, it showed me where I thought it should have been different than it was. That's the success, for me to see that, question it, let it go, and really accept reality. No, that was the best it could have been. How I showed up was exactly how I needed to show up, because that's how I showed up. There's no other way around it. There's no other way to change it. How can I know it should have been different when it's not?
This is a really nice perspective. I physically feel uplifted just
Mm-hmm.
thinking about that.
Yeah. That's because it's true. That's what the truth feels like. That is the definition of the truth will set you free.
Hmm.
By the way, Derek, I have about 5 more minutes.
Okay. Then in that case, let me see. Well, maybe I'll just turn it over to you. Like, can you either wrap this up with a nice bow, or like, is there anything that's come up for you that you haven't said that you want to make sure that you mention?
Mm. Not necessarily. I think, unless you have any questions or prompt anything, nothing's coming.
Well, maybe for a future, I did want to ask you, because you had a video about the galactic history and the future of humanity. I definitely wanted to
Mm-hmm.
get your thoughts on that. One thing we mentioned before we started was um, the New Age to Christianity
Mm-hmm.
movement, which
Mm-hmm.
people seem to be almost it's like a reverse trend of like what was
Yeah.
happening maybe a couple decades ago.
Yeah. I could talk on that a little bit. I think that's a really important topic.
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
And I can go a little over 12 o'clock my time, but so intuitively, we all know we're not just these bodies. I think if you ask majority of people, do you think there's, that you're just this physical body? Majority of people nowadays have this deep intuition. They feel like they're part of something bigger. Um, the materialist point of view, this is the mainstream point of view, the materialist point of view, mainly in the West, is we are made of matter, and this matter, evolved from a single cell organism to humans, where eventually minds were developed, and out of those minds, consciousness was developed. So it's this matter mind consciousness model, matter first. This is the source. This way of seeing is the source of all suffering. That is hell. Because by definition, if I'm this body and consciousness is a product of this body, then when consciousness goes away, or when body goes away, consciousness goes away. So I'm finite, I'm separate, I'm temporary. This becomes my identity. I take on, it's like the laws that govern materialism are now the laws that govern me. I take it all on. So fear of death, fear of non-existence, these core fears inform all the other fears. Things like lack, scarcity, competition, everything is born from this worldview of separation from the one or God. And that's the original fall from grace. That's the original sin, is that original misunderstanding of who we are. And you could say it's like as soon as a soul incarnates, if that's what you believe in, there is a forgetting. And why is there forgetting? Because consciousness has to forget itself to experience itself as seemingly separate and as a world, as a universe. It has to veil itself and create a finite mind, which is how we perceive and think and interact with the world. So and we all can agree our minds are finite. I mean, science has proven there's stuff way beyond our comprehension that our minds cannot perceive. So it creates a finite mind, consciousness. Let's put it this way: consciousness being the one creates a finite mind, filters itself through this finite mind, because we all are aware. That's another word for consciousness. This is another fact. This is not a belief. We're all aware. If I ask anyone, are you aware? They say yes, without hesitation. Yeah, I'm aware. And even if they can't say yes, they are. Say, okay, what are you feeling right now in your arm? Okay, how do you know that? You're aware of it. You're aware. We all have awareness. So awareness filters itself through the mind, and the body is an appearance in our mind. It's a sensation. Even if I go, man, this feels so physical, but what am I actually interacting with? Just sensation. I could push so hard, and what I'm actually interfacing with is a type of sensation that when I get still and I close my eyes, and you can run this experiment, and I feel just the contact between my hand and my shoulder, my direct experience is sensation.
Mm-hmm.
My direct experience of matter is sensation. I'm not experiencing matter. I'm experiencing sensation. When you investigate the sensation, I can't touch it. I can't isolate it. It's energy. So from the consciousness first point of view, everything is consciousness. Consciousness modulates itself, forms itself in these seemingly separate bodies and in the world and nature, and perceives itself through the mind. And so from that point of view, the I that I refer to as myself is not the body. From the materialist point of view, the I that I refer to is the body. It's a fundamental difference in identity. If I refer to myself as awareness, and I knowingly am doing that, if I'm knowingly understanding what that means, then all of the qualities of awareness become my identity, if we want to use that terminology, versus the qualities of my body becoming my identity. So if the qualities of awareness become my identity, well, what are qualities of awareness? There is no beginning to awareness. Try to think of when your awareness started. It's impossible, because you'd have to exist previous to it to then define a starting point. And because you can't be aware, if being previous to awareness has no awareness, you can't experience before awareness. So what do we call something that has no beginning and no end? We call it, in time, we call it eternal. If we're looking for it in space, where is awareness? People think in their head, like where in your head? Let's say you can even find a location. My pineal gland. Go, well, aren't you aware of your pineal gland? Aren't you aware of that sensation? Well, yeah, I am aware of it. So awareness can't be in the pineal gland if awareness is aware of the pineal gland. So when we try to find a location for it, we can't. So what is something that has no location, but is always here and now, has no beginning or edge to it? Well, in space, we call that infinity. So awareness is both eternal and infinite, never changing. My awareness has never changed. What I've been aware of has changed: thoughts, emotions, feelings, perception. That always changes. The awareness itself never changes, perfectly still. The only dependable, unchanging thing in our reality. So what do we call something that is all pervasive, infinite, eternal, never changing? Everything in life depends on it for its reality. It's also what everything is made of, essentially. And when I say essentially, I mean it's absolutely essential to the object. So if I take this coaster, for example, for this to exist, what is most essential to its existence? Meaning, what can I take away from this that would cause it to not exist? I mean, I could take away some of the color, the paint, this object will still be here, right? I could even burn it, and now the object is ash. So there's some remnants of it still. Even if I explode it into particles, it's still particles, right? But if I could somehow remove awareness from this, it would be impossible to exist. It would be impossible to experience. Mm-hmm. So everything at its core requires awareness. So what do I call that? The omnipresent, open, infinite, eternal. I could also say it's unconditionally loving. Why? Because no matter what I do, my awareness is not going to leave me or abandon me or change. So I'm describing God, if you've picked up on that. But I can't claim the awareness as mine, as Brandon's awareness. Oh, this is my body's awareness. No, that's the materialist model. The awareness has me. I don't have awareness. The awareness has me. It's awareness that is aware of itself. Like the sun is self-illuminating. The sun produces its own light. I don't let the light shine on me and go, oh, that's my sun. Or the moon, for example, if the light is reflecting off of the moon, we could think of a moon like a mind. If the sun is reflecting off of the moon, and now we're seeing moonlight, it's actually not moonlight. It's sunlight. No such thing as moonlight. But if the moon doesn't know that, if the moon forgets that its light is, and we could use that as awareness, as a stand-in, is from the sun, then the moon can go, no, this is my awareness. I'm God. And that's what the ego does. And that's what a lot of the Christian movement is pointing out. Your claiming to be God. You're bastardizing the teaching. You're using this for self-aggrandization. This is pantheism, which means everything has awareness, meaning my brain is producing awareness. It's mine. The trees have consciousness. No, no, no. They are consciousness. They're made of awareness. They depend on it. But I don't own that because this body can come and go and awareness is still there. So how can I own it? When this body, when I'm in a dream, I've had dreams, I'm sure you could relate to, where awareness is outside of a body in your dream. You're watching something happening, or you're in a different body. So that experience is just as valid as this experience because it's just all we have is experience. There's no such thing as a real or unreal experience. So on that level, if awareness can exist, and people that have had near-death experiences or astral projection or even psychedelics, you can experience awareness independent of the body. And even just running these experiments, when did it start? Knowing there's no start means it's not dependent on the body. So when you see that, you go, okay, pantheism can't exist. There's not awareness in things, just not everything isn't just containing sparks and degrees of awareness. Everything is that. And we've developed minds to perceive a certain segment of it. And where awareness is waking up in us as itself, and our hiding from it, that's what's dissolving. The ego's condition hiding is dissolving, and awareness itself, God itself, is waking up in each of us. So in those that don't understand all of these nuances, because it's not just enough to understand it. What it implies is I actually have to let awareness shine on all of my darkness, on everything that I've hid from it. Because as long as I do that, as long as I sustain my resistance, my belief in separation, my belief in death, my belief in my badness, my wrongness, my unlovability, I sustain an identity that is separate than awareness, because awareness itself doesn't know any of those things. Awareness isn't limited. Awareness can't be bad. Awareness can't be good. It just is. And so that perspective is called non-duality, but it requires us getting radically honest with where we're in duality to really let the light of awareness or God shine onto it, which is what it means the Christians point to of being saved by grace. They're not doing it. They know they're not healing themselves. They might give credit to Jesus or God, but what they're really doing is they're just ceasing to persist in their resistance. They're ending the choice to sin. They're ending the choice to seek. And in that relaxation, they let awareness through, they let the light through, and there's spontaneous healing and transformation. Now, this is available to everyone. You don't have to just be a Christian. But when the Christians then take that, and materialism is still there a little bit, I call it spiritual materialism. Oh, no, 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 it wasn't, the light of your own awareness. It was Jesus. They still have to point at an object. It was the Holy Spirit. It's still something outside of you. From the Bible, it's still something that perpetuates a duality. So there can be a radical healing and opening when people get really honest with themselves and let themselves be seen and forgive, which is essentially what they're doing. But as long as that core sense of separation and self remains, then their solution to sustain that state of being, sustain the happiness, sustain the freedom they're feeling, is now pray really hard, convert others. It's just back to the materialist model. A plus B equals Z. It's not what I am. It's not who I am. I can't just rest in it. I have to continue to do or become more holy, good, whatever it might be. And the seeking just puts a mask on and takes another form. It might be a higher octave than before, simply because of the radical honesty and the forgiveness they experience. But the seeking, the suffering will eventually come back in and take another form until this is really all understood and seen.
Wow. Yeah, fantastic.
We could do a whole episode. I mean, this is like, we can go
super cool. Yeah, it's reminding me of the work with Ho'oponopono and the that's like a different um, way of achieving the same sort of forgiveness or letting the light in. Yeah, really, really well explained. And I feel like this episode is one that I'll have to go back and listen to and like really like, you know, to like conceptually like understand it, but to like go through it a bunch
Yeah.
to sit with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, really, really respect all the inquiry that you've done, and just how you can lead people to see things in a new way. And it was actually really helpful, for that project that I'm working on. So thanks, thanks for the coaching. And
Yeah, man. Yeah. I hope that goes well. Let me
yeah,
know.
I'll keep
I'm
you
glad to
posted.
help. Yeah. And this was really fun. I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, bye bye.